Hello, friends. Welcome. Hello. Here we are on our third day of live streaming here on YouTube. Thank you so much for either making it out live right at the beginning today or for catching this replay. I appreciate you joining along with this experiment here. Drop a little hello in the text chat, just to let me know that you're out there, you're seeing and hearing me okay. And if you feel like it, let us know where you're from and maybe what you're working on today, or what you're thinking about right now. I'm going to start doing some sketching here. I'll do a little bit of a welcome sketch, and then we'll kind of jump into the kind of consistent topic throughout today's live stream, which will be all about the impact of sketchnoting. First, though, I'm going to do a little bit more of a scene for today's welcome sketch. I should probably, I think I'll treat these welcome sketches as a little bit of a warm-up opportunity for myself, and maybe for you as well, if you'd like to sketchnote along with me. Get a little bit comfortable, get in this mode of thinking and talking and writing and drawing all at the same time. Just earlier today, I published the first clip from the live stream. I think we're kind of going to be creating enough of these in quick enough time. Let's do something like that. I think I'm going to be able to publish 2 videos a week from these live streams. So today I published one from Monday's live stream, and then I think on Tuesday I'll share the second clip from Monday, the one where I shared the tools that I use to do this, and then we'll kind of get into this groove throughout the month of March of continuing to do these live streams every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then twice a week I will publish short clips as standalone videos to the channel. Today is Thursday, March 4th. 2021. There we go. Do let me know in the text chat, just so I feel a little, less alone here. I see some folks watching, but I'd love to see at least a few hellos in the text chat, just to make sure sound and visuals are looking okay. We had a little bit of echo here and there during Tuesday's live stream. I think I figured out like the settings that caused that. So I've adjusted those a bit to hopefully not have any echo today. But if at any point you do hear echo or something happens with the quality of the video, the text chat is the place to let me know about that. Welcome to Ksenia. Thank you for the wave and hello and clapping hands emoji. Appreciate it. And with that, we're going to jump into the first topic for today. So I'm going to move over to some blank space on today's canvas. We got a hello from Lakshu, a hello from Shannon. Sound and visuals look great. Happy to catch this new format. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for making it out. It's still new and it's still fun. It's an interesting format to play around with, so I appreciate folks that are hanging out here and experimenting along with me. So with today's focus on the impact of sketchnoting, there are a handful of kind of different angles I want to take on this topic, but the first that I feel like is worth laying out, I kind of just want to list out the impact of sketchnoting on individuals. So we'll look at groups next. Because, one of the things that's powerful and interesting and helpful about this tool is that you can use it just for yourself with your own work, the things that you're learning, maybe new habits you're implementing in your life, whatever the case may be. You can use this as an individual skill, or you can use it in a group setting. So first, I kind of want to outline the ways in which sketchnoting can have a positive impact on you as an individual. So I'm going to start listing out a bunch, but as I'm doing that, feel free to contribute your own suggestions or the positive impacts that sketchnoting has had on your life as an individual. List those out in the text chat, because I'm sure you all will come up with a few that I haven't thought of yet. And the first positive impact, kind of my favorite, and it might even be a little bit of a overarching. So it's kind of the thing that leads to all the other things. And that's a fully engaged brain. Right? In the process of sketchnoting, you're tapping into both all of the verbal processing powers of your brain, but also the visual processing powers. I think I'm going to use light gray as a highlighter, or as a kind of emphasis within that one. And then I'll use some dark gray later on to kind of branch out to all the individual pieces of this mind map here. So we've got that fully engaged brain. I also believe that sketchnoting supports clearer thinking. So, oh gosh, I don't know if I've ever actually tried to do a diamond before. Hadn't really thought of the specific visual for this one. But the general idea here is that this way of working with ideas, I think, just leads to clearer thinking. When you can see your ideas mapped out in some sort of a visual way, I think it's easier to recognize gaps in your knowledge, easier to recognize connections, or maybe false assumptions that you've made. You can just see your thoughts much better compared to just even if you maybe journal out your ideas. There's a benefit to stream of consciousness journaling, but something about mapping out your ideas in a visual way just helps you kind of see the ideas more clearly, how those ideas are connected to each other. I like that about sketchnoting. I also think sketchnoting has the positive impact of just supporting a better recall. So when used as a learning tool, whether you're reading a book, or maybe listening to a podcast, and you're doing something to visualize those ideas, no matter how sloppy or polished those visuals might be, capturing those ideas in words and in visuals. If you then think about what happens later that week, the next week, in a month's time, in a few months' time, that active engagement, I think it's the combination of having that fully engaged brain while you're listening and processing to those ideas and creating this visual artifact just makes it more likely that those ideas are going to stick. So in some cases, you'll be able to still picture your sketch note days later. In other times, it will just take a quick look. It will only take a quick reference back on what you created to remind yourself of all of those ideas. Let's do a... So that's another impact of sketchnoting on individuals. I also think that sketchnotes are they're a great jumping off point. So what I mean by that is once you've captured ideas in any sort of a diagram, any sort of a sketch, it just makes it so much easier to pinpoint ideas for deeper exploration. You can point to this thing here and say, ooh, I want to go deeper into this topic, or I want to see what happens when you merge these two things together, or this brings up this question that could be another branch of this mind map, or another aspect of that flow chart. So let's say, you create a sketch note, capture a bunch of ideas, you might recognize that this idea here, ooh, I've got a question about it. There's a new question that came up because of the way in which I captured these ideas that I want to go explore. Here's a rabbit hole that I want to go down. Or maybe one of the ideas is just a really important thing that you want to apply to your personal life. So it can be a jumping off point into taking action on that idea, or incorporating something new into the way you view the world and the way you interact in it. Let's see what else is coming up in the text chat so far. Good crew, thank you for all of the hellos. Layla coming in from Stockholm while fixing some dinner. Awesome. Like, that's fun to be like your something going on in the background while you're making a meal. Jay Johnson, yes, I am using Concepts app. Got some other kind of deep dives that we can explore. Arun mentions wanting to improve my English language. Sumya asked about how sketchnoting can impact studying or creativity. Let's see if we can add any more of like the most important elements of this question of the impact of sketchnoting on individuals. We've talked about how it's a way to more fully engage your brain. Both the verbal processing powers and the visual processing powers of your brain can help lead to clearer thinking, can lead to better recall from things that you're studying. It creates this great jumping off point. Kind of connected to the jumping off point, I think it's also, it has the potential to be a record of your evolving understanding of a topic. So, like each individual sketch note that you make is kind of like a snapshot of what you learned, maybe from this one source material or from one experience that you had. But then in a future sketch note, you might address similar topics that maybe add some nuance to it, or like cause you to think differently. It adds kind of a piece to the puzzle that you addressed or that you maybe started creating in the first sketch note. So this general like record of your learning, I think, is kind of a positive impact. So maybe at first, even just like the different ways that you can think about a given topic. Like at first, maybe it's a mind map structure that you feel like makes the most sense, but then with a certain aspect of it, you want to bring in a flow chart. Maybe later on, you bring in something like a Venn diagram. Different ways of thinking about the nuances behind whatever it is that you spend your time working on or learning or thinking about. Yeah, I like what Layla brings in here. Sketchnoting makes me slow down, and that is really good when brainstorming with others as well. Yeah, I like that. I think that's a positive impact. think it's this slowing down, and I'm trying to identify, like, I think it's almost the more accurate way of capturing, maybe. And I think it's connected to, like, the clear thinking piece. Like, you kind of slow down your thoughts so that you can see them more clearly and maybe represent them more accurately. Jane also says it's easier to find stuff later. Yeah. So it's kind of like, you might have all these different ideas and notes that you're looking at, something that you're looking for, but there's like a specific thing that you want to find. I think it's easier to kind of zero in on that thing. Yeah, because different notes stand out visually in different ways. Yes, I love that. I think what Jane mentions too is also an argument to, like, change up and experiment with different types of layout of your notes. Like, as you've probably seen, my go-to, especially when capturing ideas live here, is this mind map approach because of how flexible it is. But depending on how, like, unique the visuals are of that mind map, it could get to the point where, if you look at 10 or 20 different mind maps that I've created, they might all look really similar, which would maybe be an argument for, hey, this time maybe, like, let's try to identify an overarching visual metaphor as the container for these ideas. Or, like, what's the scene that I maybe want to use as a reference. I forgot to label this one. I think I'll add a label, and then that might be good for this first section. Let's see, how did Jane say it exactly? Yeah. Easier to find things later. I will do just a bit of adjustment to the layout and spacing here, just to give each individual idea a little bit of breathing room. And then just draw out some connecting lines here. So here we've got a handful, a probably non-comprehensive list of the positive impacts that sketchnoting can have on individuals. Ksenia asks, when using digital device, are you tempted to erase, redraw parts of the sketch? All the time. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges of using a digital note-taking tool, is that the ease of, like, the erase and the undo. I think undo is the easier trap to fall into, just because it's like, on concepts at least, it's a 2-finger tap. So all it takes is a 2-finger tap to like undo a sketch and redo it, undo, redo. So you kind of have to train yourself to not do that too frequently. Danielle says, tuning in with our grade 6 and grade 7 class from Toronto, Canada. Hello to the grade 6 and grade 7 class tuning in right now in Toronto, Canada. That's awesome. I'm here broadcasting from Portland, Oregon. So kind of the other side of the continent, but I'm not too far south from you all, I don't think. Let us know if any questions come in from that class. I'd love to hear how you all are doing and what you're thinking about and what you're working on right now. It's very cool. So with this as a kind of starting point, I think gives us a good sense for the impact of sketchnoting on individuals. Next, I want to look specifically at a related topic, which is the impact of sketchnoting on groups. And here we'll try to identify the ones that are kind of distinct from that list. There's going to be some overlap between the list of impacts on individuals and the list of impacts on groups. So here maybe we'll focus on the ones that are specific and unique to groups. And that group could be, the team that you work with at work, like maybe during a meeting that you're having. Could be a classroom working together. Maybe it's the teacher up at the front of the classroom capturing discussion among students. Maybe a couple of students are up at the whiteboard or chalkboard capturing the ideas themselves. So if I've got a starting point for the positive impact that sketchnoting can have in a group setting. So I'll start listing those out myself, but as I'm doing that, if you have thoughts on the positive impact that sketchnoting can have on groups, drop those in the text chat. Danielle mentions we are using our sketchnoting skills to research Black History Month. That's awesome. Love that. This is Concepts, Sarah. The app Concepts. So for me, I think one of the what did I do there? Oh, I don't want to fill. I think that one of the most powerful reasons, most helpful reasons to use sketchnoting in a group setting, and whether you call it sketchnoting or graphic recording or visual thinking, I try not to get too hung up on the specific words, the terminology used to describe it, but just having some sort of a visual reference, a common visual reference, that everyone is looking at, and that potentially everyone can contribute to as well, which is pretty cool. Those are some sloppy arrows there, but that's okay. By using something like this in a group setting, you're literally helping to keep everyone on the same page. I think it's less likely for these group discussions to run in circles when you have this common reference point that you can like keep pointing to. And yeah, with that related, there's a couple other ideas here I'm going to share. I think the next one that I want to share is this idea of within this group setting, you're likely kind of trying to work toward a specific outcome. You're gathering for some purpose. There's something you want to achieve within that group setting. You have a limited time to get there. I think that with this visual reference, this common reference point, I think that makes it easier to move toward a common goal. And I think that whatever the visual capture looks like is it's kind of a way of kind of tracking how you got there, right? So each new sketch, each new section on the shared workspace kind of like helps you work toward that goal and also like show you how you got there. A conversation that we had yesterday within Verbal to Visual during the workshop this week, which we do every Wednesday. In case you're interested in becoming a member of Verbal to Visual, joining on Zoom calls where you get to hop in and share what you're up to. We kind of spent quite a bit of time exploring what it might look like for a team to work together using an app like Miro or Mural. Those are two good collaborative whiteboarding tools to do this, to like work together as a group toward a common goal. And one of the dynamics was this piece of like being able to track where you've been and where you're going, even have some form of like versioning as you maybe fork in a few different directions. So this helps you to move toward that common goal and see how you got there. I think another powerful impact of sketchnoting on groups, let me, I think I'll go ahead and redraw it. I'm going to use kind of the similar scene, similar setup that I used in that first point, but in this case, what I want to focus on is one individual who says something, who brings up a particular point. Let's just use a similar color scheme as before. There's some central topic we're exploring here. The page is filling up in some sort of a way, but then, let's bring in a new mark making color. See how my sketchnoting process and color coding evolves throughout these live streams. That person gets to see the contribution that they made to the conversation, right? They get to see it there up on the board. it seems like, and I guess I've, as I sit here alone in my basement sketchnoting this thing kind of by myself, but kind of with the text chat, those joining live here, I'm fairly removed from, these group meeting settings, but I've been in enough of them at previous points in my life and also heard enough from others that, like, one of the most demotivating factors for an individual participating in this group activity, if they is when they share something and they feel like nobody heard or listened to what they just shared. So by kind of keeping this visual record, every contribution that comes up, it can have a space on this communal board. So it literally makes it so that individual contributions are seen. Let's go ahead and do that on one row. Use our space efficiently here. I think that's the main reason I select text and move it around, or visuals and move it around. I feel like either for efficiency of space or just to center align things. I like to have, text centered below the visual, as you've seen in the things I've been sketching out so far today. So these are the initial 3 ideas that first came to mind when thinking about the impact of sketchnoting on groups. I'm going to catch up with the text chat. Again, if you've got suggestions, things to add to this list, let us know in the text chat. Oh, love it. Getting specific suggestions from students here. Shout out again to... What school is it? So I can reference, if you're comfortable, you don't have to share what school, but there's a way for me to reference the classroom that's tuning in right now. Yeah, some good suggestions here. We've got remembering important concepts. Yeah, help them to collaborate to understand the topic they're researching better. Yeah, I like kind of the both of those together. I think I might join them. It's almost like the term that's coming to mind is collaborative research. In kind of the specific way that ideas can build on top of each other, ideas that are contributed by different people build up this picture that any individual in that group wouldn't have been able to get to that built up picture on their own. So I feel like with that one, the frame kind of looks like... Yeah, I want to give some space for some people to come in here. But, you've got these building blocks. Each of these maybe are individual ideas that come up. But again, with our group of people here, the fact that each person maybe made like a distinct contribution. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, and what George mentions, I feel like this piece of having a structured framework like design thinking helps keep teams on track. So I feel like we can add maybe a branch to this one where, even if you just look up the term design thinking or design sprint or agile thinking or agile teams, like in a lot of those cases, there might be like there's a specific stages to the process, and even like specific diagrams to fill out or visual metaphors to use. There's visual structure that helps you move kind of through the stages. So for that one, I'll just say something like design thinking structures. One book that comes to mind that has a bunch of those is called Game Storming, kind of one that's been around for a while, co-authored by Sonny Brown, whose TED Talk, Doodlers Unite, got me into this field in the first place. Another co-author is Dave Gray, who happens to, I think he still lives in Portland, the same city that I do, and his company, X-Plane, does a lot of cool work within the visual thinking and specifically kind of visual thinking in teams within organizations. They do a lot of good work. Game Storming, again, was the name of that book, if someone wants to throw it in the text chat. Thank you for the suggestions and comments that are coming in. Love seeing an active text chat like this. Hopefully I can keep up a little bit with it. Yeah. Some other ideas. Let's see here. Hoping to concentrate. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think I think that's very true of the impact of sketchnoting on individuals, but also groups too. I feel like it's easier to focus when you have this external resource. This is a little bit connected to the video I made a little while back on like sketchnoting in the second brain. Like you're kind of creating an externalized version of what you're thinking about so that you don't have to hold all of those things in your working memory. You've got this external source. So because of that, I think it's easier to stay focused. Maybe I feel like this visual kind of depicts that as well. So I'm going to kind of add it to this one. Ooh. Maybe I'll do it. Put my magnifying glass over here. As you kind of, with that visual reference. Don't want to do it that way. I think I don't. Still connected to that visual, but with this one, I like using that icon to like communicate like focus on a specific thing. So it's easier to stay focused and on task. I think it relieves some of the mental burden that you otherwise would spend kind of just keeping track of where the conversation is. If you didn't have this visual representation, you'd have to do a lot more work up in here. Oh, Sarah brings in a good one too. Adds an emotional depth to the concepts. Yes. Again, another one that's true of for both individual and group, but we didn't really mention it in the individual one. And I think what causes that, or what leads to that emotional depth, it's kind of like if you think about, sometimes I think about this spectrum of expressing ideas from I think I want arrows on both ends because it feels more like a spectrum. If you've got like words, just words on this end, if you've got something like realistic photographs, right? Photographs have this in their detail and what they're capturing. There's emotional resonance in a photograph, and that doesn't necessarily happen with words, or at least with photographs, it's more quick, that emotional depth to it. And I think sketch notes live kind of in the middle. They give you this visual reference. They help you to picture the thing. And I think it's that fuller picture that lends itself to the emotional depth. Plus, there's things like the use of color. I mean, the specific visuals that you bring in, actually capturing people in the sketch notes. Shout out to Honorog for the donation there. That super chat, I think is what it's called. I appreciate that. Honorog asks, can you share tips on how sketchnoting in teams can fit in for making sense of large amount of information collected and group info in categories? Yeah. I think this can kind of fit into another impact here where yeah, I think I got it. So I'm thinking a little bit about like the specific tools that you might use in this setting. And I think one of the most helpful tools is that with whatever tool you're using to get ideas on the board, like I'm thinking about sticky notes in particular. So at first, We're going to show a little bit of a progression here. So maybe there's one topic, one question that the group is responding to, and everyone kind of jots down as many ideas as they can. Each individual idea gets its own sticky note, goes up on the board somewhere. And then still on that same board, still responding to that same question, because those sticky notes are modular, you can start to group them, like which ideas are related to each other. So what sort of grouping makes sense? And I think affinity mapping, I think, is kind of the term for this type of grouping. Correct me in the text chat if I'm wrong about that. So you can do this grouping, and then you can kind of decide, like, okay, what do you want to do with each group of those ideas? Can you ignore some of them for now? Do you maybe need to transfer a few of those and do a deeper dive? Like what new questions come up now that you've got an understanding of this first question? Like, where do you want to go next with the ideas? So you can gather lots of ideas quickly. Then group them and decide what sort of follow-up action makes sense next. So kind of no matter what you're doing, what the process looks like, I think it's always going to be iterative. So it's always, while you might get to these kind of like temporary stopping points or pausing points where maybe you want to snap a photo to capture, like, okay, here's our current understanding of this question that we're talking about. But it's always going to be like, okay, what might be a helpful next step to keep these ideas moving forward? All dependent on what the goal is that you're moving toward. A couple of other book recommendations coming through from George. Dan Rome, The Back of the Napkin. Visual Meetings. I think that might be a David Sibbett one, if I'm remembering correctly. How graphics, sticky notes, and idea mapping can transform group productivity. Love it. Good set of ideas here. And another case of there are probably others, but what we've explored so far, let me do a little bit of rearranging to make our spacing a little bit better. So we've seen that when sketchnoting in groups, that helps to keep everyone on the same page. We're literally looking at the kind of same visual record of where you are, where you're going, which makes it easier to stay focused and stay on task because there's less that each individual has to remember. It's easier to move toward a common goal because you can see the progress, and maybe if you're using a specific design thinking structure, You might already have some visual cues to help work through each stage of the process to get toward that common goal. The contributions of each individual are seen on the board, which I think helps keep each person motivated with the process. You have this way of gathering lots of ideas quickly and then grouping them together and deciding kind of where to go next with each of them. It adds emotional depth, this visual imagery that gets you not all the way over to something like a photograph, but moves you in that direction so that you can stay closer to the actual experience. Often, there's some sort of problem you're solving for other people. It's with many of these conversations that you're having within a group, there likely is another individual or another group of people that you're serving with that work. And I think that including sketch notes, especially if you include the people that you're intending to serve with your work, like it keeps you closer to those people. I think that's where that emotional depth can come in. And you have this opportunity to do some collaborative research. Kind of each person contributes this one building block that builds up to this picture that's more helpful than if each person just tried to do that on their own. I love it. So here's a non-comprehensive list of the impact that sketchnoting can have on groups. Thank you for all the suggestions coming through on the text chat. There's another idea I wanted to bring in here related to impact. And after I share this idea, I'll try to catch up with the questions that are coming through within the live chat, and at least give some quick responses if possible. But also feel free to, if you have a thought about a question that someone else has asked, go ahead and add your own 2 cents at the person. Maybe reference the question and throw in your own suggestions here. What I wanted to make sure to share today is this idea that came up in... So this idea here came up in response to the question of when do I stop sketchnoting? How do I know when to stop the current sketchnote that I'm working on? So it's that question that kind of led to the development of this idea here of the impact curve, which first came up, I think it was during a workshop inside of Verbal to Visual. Where you've got impact on the y-axis here, the impact of your sketch notes. And then on the x-axis, it's the time and effort that you put into it. And I'm going to share the general shape of this curve, but then I'm going to share a few specific examples because I think what this curve looks like depends on your sketchnoting process. But in general, I feel like when you choose to sketchnote something that you're learning or just representing the own ideas that you're thinking through, in the beginning, it's kind of this sharp upward moving curve. I do think that over time, that curve kind of levels out, and you get to this point where the more effort you put in, you're not really increasing the impact that those sketch notes have on whatever it is that you're working on. So to answer the question of when to stop sketchnoting, I think it's worth paying attention to, there's some, you get to decide where exactly to like place this line. But there's a point at which your time and effort result in diminishing returns. So like the more, spending another 30 minutes or another hour on whatever sketch note you're working on, that might not be worth it. You might not actually be increasing the impact that those sketch notes have on whatever it is that you're working on. So with that in mind, like this spot right here, whoa, don't move that way. That's kind of the point at which you probably want to stop sketchnoting. And I think maybe this question of when to stop sketchnoting and just like let it be, let that be the finished version of your sketch note. It'll look a little bit different whether you're using analog tools, pen and paper, versus digital tools. Because with digital tools, it is so much easier to do all of this fine tuning, moving things around, erasing things, redrawing things, resizing things. So the question to ask yourself while you're doing that type of editing is like, is this editing actually making the thing I'm creating more impactful? And if it's not, then stop. Stop where you are. So I think that can be like the general shape of this curve. I want to label the first section, like this space under here. I'm trying to think of a good label for it. Maybe I'll just say what you're doing here is you're growing your sketch notes. Or what that represents are your growing sketch notes. I don't know that I've ever used that verb growing before, but I think it fits. Like sketchnoting is this kind of organic process where you kind of grow something on the page and it ends up having this kind of final form to it. So I think that this kind of represents the general curve here, but I want to do a couple of specific examples of what this curve looks like that's dependent on your specific type of sketchnoting process. So for this part, let me move. I'll keep the impact curve as the title there. I'll move this reference. Let me make sure we don't run into a previous sketch. I might swing back and refer to that kind of generalized state of the curve. But let's draw it again. And for this one, the specific sketchnoting process that I would like to try to map out is, let's call it a one-page mind map. So maybe you're listening to a hour-long conversation, you've got a big sketch pad in front of you, you've decided to sketchnote that conversation using a mind map. Gotta move around my layers again. That was the first time I used the highlighter today. So for this one, I think the initial shape of that curve looks like it did before. You're filling your mind map, you're adding ideas to it. But the more, if you've put this constraint on yourself that it's just going to be a single page mind map, the more crowded that page becomes, I think the less impactful the end result is. So as that page fills up, you're kind of potentially getting less, you will get less value out of it in the future. And then I think this actually starts going down because of the overcrowdedness of that sketch note. So this like inflection point right here, in that first part, again, here you're, why not? Let's use that same verb again. Within that first section, you're growing it. It's helpful. It's expanding. But once you cross a certain threshold, things become too crowded. So there's a point at which adding new mark to the page doesn't help you at all. It just it clutters your sketch notes. I feel like this was a thing that happened early on for me with sketchnoting. Even when I was just listening to podcasts where I wanted to capture some highlights, there wasn't a lot of pressure around any sense of like comprehensiveness, but new ideas keep coming up, or new details kept coming in that I tried to like cram an extra couple words here or an extra little sketch here. And it took many times of me attempting to do that, squeezing in of a little bit more text or a little bit more detail, and then looking back and realized, oh, that just makes this thing less useful. I had to learn that lesson by doing that a number of times. I'm curious to hear on a live text chat if you've ever experienced that. You're doing your sketch note and there comes a point when you've realized you've tried to put too much on a single page. Just watch out for that and give yourself permission to not capture more details, and like use this graph as a reference point in your mind just to remind yourself that there might come a point when adding more marks to the page isn't going to make that sketch note any more useful for you. Thank you, Danielle Montanaro. So great to be in your class today. So that's what it could look like for, this specific sketchnoting process of a one-page mind map. I'd encourage you to like sketch out what you think this curve looks like for your go-to sketchnoting process. It could even be, you could apply this to your individual sketchnoting. You might also apply it, connecting back to our previous conversation, like if there's a group sketchnoting activity, visual thinking activity. What does that impact curve look like? There's one more specific example that I'm going to bring in. Let's move this one over here for now. Again, we've got impact, time and effort. And part of the reason I think this type of curve is helpful for you to think about and craft for yourself is that it places the emphasis of your sketchnoting on impact as opposed to what it looks like. One of the other biggest traps that you can get into with sketchnoting is caring too much about the artistic quality. I always say that like you can take your sketch notes in an illustrative direction if you want, but you don't have to. And I think the core purpose of sketchnoting isn't in that direction. You can do some really interesting things with it, but I think it's more helpful to focus first on the impact that you want these notes to have on your life and the folks that you're working with. So the second example, I will call let me see if I came up with a good name for it earlier. I think I'll just share like the defining feature of this process is a bullet points first process. So this is an approach that I often take. Why are you not? Oh, I forgot to move you back to automatic. Oh, well, that's annoying. What if I do this? Oh, yeah. Messed up my layering tool here. That's okay, though. We'll use kind of the weird filler tool in a way that I'm not quite used to, but that's all right. So for me, when I'm listening to a podcast or maybe reading a book, sometimes I kind of separate the stages of the sketchnoting process. I don't go straight to concepts, for example, to sketch things out. Instead, there are these distinct phases. I'm going to pull up a reference that I sketched out earlier. So it could be that the process looks something like this. How many of these do I want to have? 1, 2, 3. So with something like this, I'm going to kind of define what's going on for me in each of these sections. So when I talk about, taking bullet points first, it's this quick capture, kind of similar maybe to like the sticky note capture that we referenced earlier in the live stream today, where the first stage of the process is just filtering. You're not yet worrying about how you're going to sketch out those ideas, how you'll visualize them. You're just filtering things out, which is a nice way to kind of single task your way through the process, as opposed to like going straight to sketchnoting. You're kind of multitasking. If you prefer to single task, then like this approach might work better for you. So first, maybe you filter into, let's do some reference sketches above here for this filter stage. You're just grouping things in bullet points, maybe into different sections, right? So you've got this bullet point list. Maybe you've identified different sections, but you're not yet sketching things out. In the second stage, like after you've listened to that podcast and you've got your like full set of bullet point notes, then you can worry about structure. This was an aha moment for Suzanne within Verbal to Visual. Shout out to you, Suzanne, if you happen to see this. The fact that you can break up the sketch note itself, the capturing of ideas, you can first like spend a little bit of time thinking about what the layout will be, what the structure will be, before you like sketchnote each individual thing. And even just referencing the visual that Suzanne shared in reference to that. Maybe something that looks like this, where like, okay, there's one big theme that's going that's going to go in the center, and then I want space to talk about this thing up top, this thing over here, this thing over here, this thing over there. So like, just decide what page layout, what structure will work well based on the sections of those bullet point notes and the details. So you kind of like take the time to figure out that overall visual structure first, and then you actually visualize it. So here's where you spend some time actually thinking about and sketching out the specific visuals that go into each of those sections. And then maybe the last step here is just a bit of refining. Maybe a little bit of light editing. If you're using like a digital tool, maybe you're moving things around a little bit. Maybe you break out the highlighter. Maybe you grab the eraser. Those angled erasers are kind of hard to draw. Let's try that again. I think maybe something like this. Maybe better. So move things around, highlight, maybe do some erasing. And with each stage of this process, what I like about it is that you can actually like stop at any of those places. Like each of these places represent potential stopping points if you want. This is kind of how I'm approaching taking notes on podcasts and books. I'm always doing that filtering process. Well, there are some podcasts that I just want to listen to for fun, but if I choose to take notes on them, I'll do that bullet point list first. And depending on what comes up, I might decide that like, that's enough. I don't feel the need to spend any more time creating a sketch note out of it. And even if I don't do that, I still have this bullet point filtered list of the ideas that stood out to me from that particular episode. So each of those X's there represent potential stopping points. So that's another example of like what do some kind of comparing and contrasting of the three that we looked at here. I guess we'll keep our title up top. Not sure the best way to like get all of these on one page here, which isn't too important. I'll probably focus just on each of these individually, but just kind of as a recap, the general idea with your sketchnoting is that, you know, this curve, the impact that your sketchnoting will have on your life, like focusing on an individual sketchnoting session, at first it's going to be pretty sharply moving upward, but as you fill that page, the further you work with, the longer time you spend on that individual sketch note, eventually you're going to get to this point where extra effort isn't going to result in any more impact. That's kind of the main idea. But then I hope it was helpful to look at a few specific sketchnoting processes here. If you're going with the mind map approach, you're growing it, you kind of fill the page. Eventually things become too crowded. And once you're crowding the page with more ideas, that's when the impact of those sketch notes is going to start moving downward. Or if it's something like a kind of multi-stage approach to your sketchnoting, maybe bullet points first, they have these different kind of peaks to them, where at each stage of the process, you're doing this valuable thing that adds to the impact. But you can kind of choose to stop at those different stages. And then again, eventually that impact curve kind of levels off, where more time and effort isn't going to increase the impact of those notes. Would love to hear in the text chat if this idea of the impact curve feels helpful or useful, if it's a little bit of an aha moment or not. And with that, I'll do some catching up on the text chat. I think let me try to, I'll move this guy over just a little. Try to keep those two. Have a good reference maybe for a few of those there on the page. There we go. We'll leave it there. Leave the frame there for a little bit while I kind of catch up on the text chat here for the last 5 minutes of the live stream. And again, thank you so much for hanging out. I'm going to go in reverse order here. George mentions to those in the chat with dyslexia, sketchnoting helps build confidence while we connect ideas differently. Yeah, I love that. I've had a few chats with folks who experience dyslexia who were drawn to sketchnoting specifically for that reason. And it has seemed helpful that relying more on these visual cues and not exclusively on words can be a real helpful thing. Shout out to an encouragement to go check out the work of Pablo Stanley. His design illustration work is amazing. Thank you for that. I'm not familiar. I will go check that out. Ooh, another angle on this impact curve and like when to stop sketchnoting from Maria. I think that you stop sketchnoting when you have a clear idea about what to do next in order to attain your goal. I love that. That's so good. I want to incorporate that into like this impact curve as well. Maybe I will do another way to think about, or I guess since I've been using that blue X to represent stopping points, another way to think about them, bringing in this idea from Maria Elena Gonzalez. Just to make this point stand out a little bit. Oops. It's like what I like about it too is that like you're stopping the sketchnoting because you now know how you want to keep moving forward with the thing that it is that you're working on, right? Which is just a great reminder that like the purpose isn't to create a sketch note. The purpose is to learn something new or solve a particular problem, figure out how you want to move forward with this thing or that. That's why I like Maria's point so much. Oops. I'm going to go ahead and credit Maria with that point. So it's like stop sketchnoting. When you know how to move forward. Oh, not Gonzalez. Maria, if for any reason you don't want me to include your name in this sketch note, let me know. George asks, what has been your experience in working with executives using sketchnoting to present ideas and reports? Not a ton of personal experience, but there's a video from not too long ago. I forget what the title is, but I'll try to find it, where I had a one-on-one chat with a guy named Miguel, who shared, like, his boss was giving a presentation, like a live presentation on Facebook, and he put together these kind of sketchnoted slides for his boss for that presentation, and they kind of like collaborated on it together. But Miguel was the one like doing the sketchnoting and creating these visual slides. And when they live streamed it to Facebook, it was like one of the top like most viewed live videos there. And they ended up he ended up giving that presentation multiple times, and people really enjoyed the visual nature of it. So that's a positive case study there that you might want to go look back on, or check out the details of that one. It might spark some ideas. Might also relate to the previous question you asked, George, about how would you introduce sketchnoting at the corporate level. Just the way those kind of slides are created, especially because a lot of them were kind of data driven too. So that one was a cool combination of like sketched slides and these visual thinking elements and kind of like data type of graphical representations that folks within the corporate setting might be used to. So it's like keep them hooked in by showing some things that they're familiar with, but also weave in some maybe newer, more different visual elements that they might not have seen yet. Yeah. George says sketchnoting before diving into PowerPoint would lend itself to clear communication. Yeah, and what's kind of cool with tools like Keynote and PowerPoint, they both have relatively easy to use drawn elements. Like if you have a tablet, if you have an iPad, for example, you can create these sketches right within Keynote or PowerPoint. And when you're playing back those presentations, you can animate them so that it shows literally like how it just replays the way you drew it. And you can adjust the time too. You can like speed it up. That's the format that I used for my previous handful of videos here on YouTube. I created them entirely within Keynote and used the pen tool in their drawn animations to use this kind of common presentation tool, but fully sketch out a presentation, which has been fun. I'm going to go find a couple of specific videos that I referenced. If this doesn't put too much pressure on my computer here. So let's see. First, I'm going to share one of the videos, an example of a video created in Keynote. And then I want to find that one that I was referencing. Yeah, the title of it is Creating a Visual Presentation. Let me make sure I get to the right portion of that video. So this one that I'm sharing in the text chat, that second one, creating a visual presentation, that's the case study. I had a chat with Miguel about what he did within his job, how he helped his boss create this really cool presentation that that was well received, which I thought was really cool. So thank you for helping to contribute to kind of this exploration of what it might look like to pay attention and actually like graph out the impact that your sketchnoting work has, and potentially the different stages of that sketchnoting work, so that you can have more confidence in knowing when to stop, when to put that sketchnote away and move on to the next thing. Or as Maria shared, like once you've identified, what are you going to do next in order to attain your goal, to move forward toward that goal that your sketchnotes are designed to support. With that, we will kind of wrap it up for this week. Any closing thoughts? Throw them in the text chat, which is kind of tricky. I know there's like at some point I need to do a little bit of a test of when. I think there's a little bit of a delay in when I'm saying these words in the exact moment that you get them and can respond in the text chat. It's probably not too much of a lag, but there's probably a little bit of one there. So any closing thoughts, throw them in the text chat as we kind of start to wrap up. Layla says, I heard someone mention Pablo Stanley. The presentation in the background may have been done in Procreate. Another great app out there for sketchnoters, Procreate. George says, thank you for sharing your time. Have a creative day. I wish a creative day to all of you as well. I've even got a couple sips of coffee left, which is always nice. Also, last call for, I'm thinking now about future live sessions here. If there is a specific question about sketchnoting, directly related to sketchnoting or kind of tangentially related to sketchnoting, go ahead and throw it in the text chat, because future sessions will be more Q&A related, I think. So it's always nice to have kind of a queue of questions that I can pull in. I do plan to be back here tomorrow at the same start time, 10 a.m. Pacific. What's a little bit tricky about tomorrow is that my the power at my house is scheduled to be turned off for like a 6-hour stretch, sometime between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m., because they're replacing a power pole in my neighborhood, which is kind of the worst timing, since I would like to start this live stream at 10 a.m. tomorrow. But there's a chance that power will be shut off before 10 a.m. Or maybe like if we get things started in the middle of the live stream, it might randomly shut off. So I'm mentioning that now as a disclaimer that I will attempt to do a similar live stream tomorrow, but it might be outside of my control if the power of my house just goes out. So if this doesn't happen tomorrow, you'll know why we weren't able to make it. Cool. With that, we will wrap it up for today. I will sign off. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Look forward to seeing you again in a future live stream if you're able to make it. Have a great day, everyone.